Picture a kitchen in 1943, 1 fresh egg a week, 2 ounces of butter, a lump of cheese the size of a matchbox. And yet somehow families baked, fed 5 mouths, and never went to bed hungry. Here is the part nobody tells you. A handful of those wartime tricks would still strip pounds off your shopping bill today, right now, in 2025. Number 9 was printed in a Ministry of Food leaflet and quietly beats a £4 supermarket jar. Number 2 turns something you scrape into the bin every single week into a free meal. Food companies spent decades teaching us to forget these, because remembering them costs them money. Hit that subscribe button, because this list might genuinely change how you shop. Let us count down the 25 smartest ration tricks that vanished from British kitchens. Number 25. Reuse tea leaves. Tea was rationed to 2 ounces a person a week, barely a fortnight's worth for a proper brewing family, so nothing went down the sink. Your great-grandmother would tip the used leaves from the pot back into the caddy, dry them on the warm range, and stretch a second weaker brew from them, sometimes a third with a fresh pinch added. The spent leaves had a final job too. Scattered damp over the carpet, they trapped dust before sweeping, and dug into the soil they fed the roses. A £1/4 pound of decent loose tea today runs you about £3. Most households bin enough leaves over a year to brew a fortnight of free cups. The trick was never weakness. It was respect for something precious, and a refusal to pay twice for the same leaf. Number 24. Sour milk scones. Before fridges sat in every scullery, milk turned in a day during summer, and a turned bottle was not a tragedy, it was an opportunity. Your nan never poured it away. That faint sourness was exactly what a batch of scones wanted. The lactic acid reacted with bicarbonate of soda the way buttermilk does, giving a rise lighter than any fresh milk could manage. 8 ounces of flour, a knob of marg, a teaspoon of bicarb, and that gone-off milk became a dozen scones for next to nothing. Today, we tip soured milk down the drain and then buy a tub of buttermilk for a baking recipe that wanted curdled milk all along. A pint saved is a pint not bought. Your grandmother understood that turned milk was simply buttermilk wearing a disguise. Number 23. Potato peelings, twice used. Potatoes were never rationed, which made them the backbone of the wartime plate, and not a scrap of one was wasted. The peelings most of us shovel into the bin had 2 more lives in them. Scrubbed clean first, then peeled thick, those skins went into a pot with an onion and a bay leaf and simmered into a savoury stock that cost absolutely nothing, or they were tossed in a little dripping, salted and crisped in the oven into a snack children fought over before crisps came in shiny bags. A bag of spuds peeled over a year throws away enough skin to flavour a dozen soups. We pay £1.20 for a tub of stock that those peelings make for free. The Ministry of Food called it economy, your nan just called it sense. Number 22. Pea pods and carrot tops soup. First pattern break. Here is where the thrift gets clever. When you shelled fresh peas or topped a bunch of carrots, the bits everyone else binned were the bits your grandmother saved. Empty pea pods, simmered slowly and pushed through a sieve, gave up a sweet green liquor that became the base of a soup tasting unmistakably of summer. Carrot tops, chopped fine like parsley, lifted a stew or thickened a broth. A handful of outer cabbage leaves joined the pot too. Nothing that grew was beneath using. A modern bag of peas costs little, but the principle is the point. We throw away the most flavourful parts of half our vegetables and then buy flavour back in a stock cube. That pot of pod soup fed a family for the price of vegetables they had already paid for once. Number 21. Reviving and remaking stale bread. A loaf was sacred, and stale bread was not waste. It was simply bread waiting for its second job. Hard crusts were grated into breadcrumbs and kept in a jar to coat fish, bind a risole, or top a pudding. Thick slices were turned into poor knights of Windsor, dipped in a little milk and egg, fried golden and dusted with the last of the sugar, a pudding posh enough for Sunday made from bread too hard for tea. Even the heel went into a bread and butter pudding. Today, the average British home bins around 20 slices of bread a week and then buys a bag of breadcrumbs for £1. Your grandmother would have been baffled. To her, stale bread was free pudding, free coating, and free thickening, all hiding in plain sight on the side. Number 20. Mock cream. Real cream was a memory for most of the war, an impossible luxury, so the Women's Institute taught a substitute that fooled everyone at the table. Your nan would cream together a little margarine and sugar until pale, then beat in cold milk a teaspoon at a time, very slowly, until it billowed up soft and white and held a peak. Spooned onto a scone or a wartime sponge, it passed for the real thing. A small tub of double cream today is well over £1 and sours in 2 days. The mock version cost pennies and used what was already in the larder. We reach for squirty cream now without a second thought, but a knob of marg and a drop of milk made a topping that cost almost nothing and never went off in the back of the fridge. Number 19. The eggless vinegar cake. Second pattern break. Now here is one that sounds like it should not work. With eggs rationed to 1 a week, a cake that needed 2 or 3 was out of the question, so the trick was to bake one with no egg at all. A tablespoon of vinegar stirred into the milk, then bicarbonate of soda added so the whole lot fizzed and frothed, and that reaction did the lifting an egg would have done. The vinegar taste vanished entirely in the oven, leaving a moist, tender sponge that kept fresh for days. It appeared in every wartime cookbook under a dozen names. Eggs today are not cheap, and a baking recipe can swallow half a box. A splash of malt vinegar and a spoon of bicarb is pennies. Your grandmother baked birthday cakes on nothing but pantry staples and a chemical reaction. Number 18. Carrots as the secret sweetener. Sugar was tightly rationed, but carrots grew freely in every dig for victory plot, and they are quietly one of the sweetest things in the garden. The Ministry of Food pushed this hard. Grated carrot went into puddings, into cakes, even into a strange little sweet called carrot fudge that children chewed in place of toffee. Boiled down, carrots added sweetness to a jam and bulk to a marmalade when sugar ran short. A bag of carrots costs barely anything and outlasts a bag of sugar by weeks. We have forgotten that vegetables can sweeten as well as fill. Your nan stretched a tiny sugar ration twice as far by letting the humble carrot do half the work, and the carrot cake we treat as a tea shop treat was born from exactly that necessity. Number 17. Mock banana. Bananas vanished completely during the war, a fruit a whole generation of children grew up never tasting, so the kitchens of Britain invented one. Your grandmother would boil parsnips until soft, mash them smooth, and beat in a few drops of banana essence bought for pennies from the chemist. Spread on bread, it genuinely fooled children who had never known the real thing. It sounds absurd, and it was, but it solved a real problem with what grew in the cold British ground. Parsnips cost very little and store for months. The trick is less about parsnips than about the lesson underneath it. When something is dear or gone, the clever cook does not go without, she recreates it from what she has. That inventiveness is the thing supermarkets quietly trained out of us. Number 16. Oatmeal to stretch the mince. A pound of mince had to feed a family for 2 meals, not 1, and the trick to doubling it was a handful of porridge oats. Your nan would soak oatmeal in a little stock until it swelled, then mix it through the minced beef before browning. The oats soaked up the meat juices, carried the flavour right through, and bulked the dish out, so a half pound of mince filled a pie meant for a pound. Shepherd's pie, rissoles and faggots all leaned on this. Mince is one of the things that has climbed hardest in price, and a bag of oats is a fraction of the cost. We buy more meat to feed more people. Your grandmother bought oats and made the meat go twice as far, and nobody at the table ever guessed. Number 15. Mock marzipan. Third pattern break. Christmas did not stop for rationing, and neither did the cake, but with almonds nearly impossible to find, the marzipan had to be faked. Your great-grandmother made it from semolina or soya flour, a little margarine, sugar, and a few drops of almond essence, kneaded together into a paste that rolled and cut exactly like the real thing. Tinted and pressed onto the top of a cake, no guest could tell. Ground almonds today are one of the most expensive things in the baking aisle, easily several pounds for a small bag, and a Christmas cake needs a lot. The mock version cost a few pence. We have been taught that the festive table demands the expensive ingredient, but your nan proved a clever paste and a bottle of essence could crown a cake just as proudly for almost nothing. Number 14. Beetroot in the chocolate cake. With cocoa scarce and sugar rationed, getting a rich, moist chocolate cake took ingenuity, And the answer came from the vegetable patch. Grated or pureed beetroot stirred into the batter did 3 jobs at once. It added natural sweetness, it kept the crumb damp for days so the cake never dried out, and its deep colour made a thin scrape of cocoa look twice as chocolatey. The earthiness disappeared completely, leaving only a fudgy, lasting sponge. Beetroot is cheap and keeps for weeks in a cool cupboard. We now buy moisture in the form of expensive ingredients, or we accept a dry cake that's staled by Tuesday. Your grandmother knew a single boiled beet could carry a whole cake, and bakers who still do it will tell you the texture beats anything from a packet mix. Number 13. Saving the bacon rind. The bacon ration was small, just a few rashers a week, so the rind that most of us trim and bin was treated as treasure. Your nan never threw it out. Crisped up in a dry pan, it gave a salty crackle to scatter over a soup. Dropped whole into a pot of soup or beans, it melted away its smoky, fatty flavour into the whole dish, doing the job of a whole rasher for free. A jar of rinds lived in the larder, building up flavour for the stock pot. We pay a premium now for smoked bits to lift a casserole, while the smokiest part of the bacon goes straight in the food waste caddy. Your grandmother got 2 uses out of 1 rasher, the meat for the plate and the rind for the pot, and wasted not a scrap of either. Number 12. The dripping jar. Every joint of meat, rare as it was, gave up precious fat as it roasted, and that fat was caught, strained, and kept like gold. Your great-grandmother poured the hot dripping through muslin into a jar that sat by the stove, and that golden fat fried the eggs, roasted the potatoes, greased the cake tins, and got spread straight onto bread with a pinch of salt for a supper in itself. It cost nothing because you had already paid for it with the meat. Today, we pour roasting fat down the sink, which blocks the drains, and then buy a bottle of oil for frying and a tub of spread for toast. 1 Sunday joint produces enough dripping to cook with all week. Your nan understood that the fat was not waste at all. It was a second ingredient you got for free. Number 11. The 2 stock from 1 set of bones. 4th pattern break. A chicken carcass or a ham bone was never a single-use item, and the cleverest cooks got 2 stocks out of every one. Your grandmother would simmer the bones long and slow for the first rich stock, strain it off, and then, instead of binning the bones, cover them again with fresh water and simmer a second, lighter stock for a thinner soup or to cook the vegetables in. A roast carcass that most of us throw out after Sunday gave a family 3 or 4 meals of soup across the week. A box of stock cubes costs over £1, and a carton of fresh stock more again. Those bones you're about to bin tonight would make both for free. Your nan saw a carcass and saw the next week's dinners hiding inside it. Number 10. Mock goose, the all-vegetable centerpiece. With meat scarce and a goose a distant dream, the wartime kitchen learned to build a roast from the garden. Layers of sliced potato, apple and onion, seasoned with a little sage and dotted with the precious dripping, were baked slowly until the top crisped and the inside turned soft and savoury. It sat proudly in the centre of the table where a joint would have gone, and it satisfied just the same. Lord Walton's famous vegetable pie ran on the same idea. Today, a Sunday joint is one of the most expensive things in the trolley, easily £10 or more. A tray of potatoes, apples and onions is a couple of pounds at most. Your grandmother proved you could set a proper roast on the table for the price of a few vegetables, and nobody left the table hungry. Number 9. Marrow and less sugar jam. Jam needed sugar, and sugar was rationed, so the trick was to make a jar go further and lean on cheap, abundant fruit. A glut of marrows from the allotment, which cost nothing and grew like weeds, was diced, sweetened lightly, and flavoured with ginger and a little lemon into a jam that filled the shelf for winter. Windfall apples, bramble fruit, anything going spare was turned into preserves with the smallest sugar possible. A decent jar of jam in the shops today is well over £2. A marrow you grew or were given, plus a fraction of a bag of sugar, fills several jars. We have forgotten that jam was once a way to capture a free glut before it rotted, not a thing you simply bought. Your nan turned a surplus that would have spoiled into a larder full of winter sweetness. Number 8. Hedgerow foraging. The countryside and even the city verges were a free larder, and your grandmother knew exactly when to raid them. Late summer brought blackberries by the bucketful from every bramble hedge, gathered into pies, crumbles and jam at no cost beyond stained fingers and a scratch or two. Elderflowers made cordial in June. Rosehips made a syrup rich in vitamin C that the Ministry of Health actively encouraged. And crab apples made a jelly. None of it cost a penny. A punnet of blackberries in the shop now is well over £2 for a handful, and they grow wild and unwanted on every footpath in September. Your grandmother filled her larder from the hedgerows each autumn, free for the picking, while we walk past the same brambles and then pay supermarket prices for fruit that grows for nothing just outside the door. Number 7. Nettle soup and free greens. Before the spring vegetables came in, the cheapest greens of all grew uninvited in every garden and verge, and the wartime cook knew to pick them. Young nettle tops, gathered with gloves, lost their sting the moment they hit boiling water and made a soup tasting close to spinach, full of iron and completely free. Dandelion leaves went into salads, wild garlic flavoured a pot, and goosegrass and fat hen filled out a stew. The Ministry of Food encouraged all of it. We now pay over £1 for a bag of spinach that wilts in the fridge by Thursday, while nettles push up through every fence for free each spring. Your nan saw a patch of nettles and saw a meal. We see a weed and reach for the strimmer, having forgotten the larder growing under our feet. Number 6. Apple peel into pectin, vinegar and jelly. When you peeled and cored apples, the bits that went into your bin were the bits your grandmother prized most. Apple peelings and cores are packed with pectin, the very thing that sets jam, so they were simmered, strained, and the liquid added to a runny preserve to set it firm without buying shop pectin at all. The same peelings, covered with sugar water and left to ferment, slowly turned into a gentle apple cider vinegar for the kitchen. Nothing was wasted from a single apple. A bottle of pectin or a bottle of cider vinegar each runs you a couple of pounds today. The peelings from a weekend of baking make both for nothing. Your nan looked at apple scraps and saw setting power and free vinegar, while we see rubbish and then buy back exactly what we threw away. Number 5. Soda bread, no yeast required. Yeast was hard to come by and time was short, so the wartime kitchen leaned on a bread that needed neither. Flour, bicarbonate of soda, salt, and that soured milk we mentioned earlier came together into a dough that went straight from bowl to oven. No kneading, no waiting hours for a rise. In under an hour, you had a warm, dense, satisfying loaf for the price of a few pantry staples. A loaf in the shops now is easily £1.50 and often far more for anything decent. Homemade soda bread costs a fraction of that and needs no special skill or equipment. We have been taught bread is a complicated thing best left to bakeries. Your grandmother turned out a fresh loaf on a weeknight with 4 cheap ingredients and a hot oven and never thought twice about it. Number 4. Preserving eggs in water glass. When hens laid well in spring and summer, eggs were briefly plentiful, and the clever housewife did not let that bounty go to waste before the lean winter months. Fresh eggs were lowered into a bucket of water glass, a cheap solution of sodium silicate from the chemist, which sealed the shells and kept them good for months without a fridge. Come December, when eggs were scarce and dear, she had a store laid down from the summer glut for almost nothing. Eggs have climbed sharply in price and still swing with the seasons. The idea of buying cheap when plentiful and storing for when they are dear has been completely lost to us. Your grandmother thought in seasons and bought ahead, smoothing out the year so she never paid winter prices, and a bucket in the pantry made it possible. Number 3. Windowsill herbs and a thrifty garden. Flavour was the first casualty of rationing, so the wartime cook grew her own on the cheapest plot of all, a sunny windowsill or a few feet of yard. A pot of mint, parsley and chives cost almost nothing to start and came back year after year, turning a plain dish of vegetables into something worth eating. A box of soil grew lettuce and radishes in weeks. The Dig for Victory campaign turned flower beds and even bomb sites into vegetable plots feeding whole streets. A single packet of supermarket herbs today is around £1 and slimy in the fridge within days. One pot on the sill gives you fresh herbs all summer for the price of that single packet. Your nan grew flavour for free, while we rent it by the wilting bagful and bin half of every one. Number 2. The perpetual stock pot. This is the trick that ran the whole wartime kitchen, the quiet engine behind everything. A large pot sat at the back of the stove, and into it went everything. The vegetable trimmings, the outer leaves, the bones, the bacon rinds, the cooking water from the greens that we pour away. It simmered gently, was strained for soup or gravy as needed, topped up again, and never truly emptied. That single pot turned a week of scraps that cost nothing into the base of every soup, stew, and gravy the family ate. Stock cubes and cartons cost real money and taste of salt and little else. The scraps you bin this week would have filled that pot for free. Your grandmother wasted nothing because nothing was waste. It was all simply the next meal, waiting in the pot. Number 1. Baking your own daily bread. And at the very top sits the simplest, most powerful trick of all, the one that fed the nation through its hardest years. Your grandmother baked her own bread, and it cost a fraction of a bought loaf. Flour, water, a little yeast or bicarb, and salt mixed in one bowl became 2 or 3 loaves for the price the baker charged for one. The national loaf, wholemeal and filling, kept a family going on pennies. Bread is the single most binned food in Britain today, and a decent loaf now costs well over £1, while a sack of flour makes a dozen for the same money. The skill that every household once had has all but vanished, and we pay the shops to do daily what our grandmothers did without thinking. She knew that bread, the very staff of life, was the cheapest thing she could possibly make, and the dearest thing she could possibly buy. There they are. 25 tricks that fed a nation on almost nothing and would still beat your supermarket today. Try just one this week. The dripping jar, the stock pot, the soured milk scones, the windowsill herbs. Then come back and tell me in the comments which one you tried and whether your nan was right all along. Because here is the truth they spent millions making us forget. Your grandmother was never going without. She was getting more for less than any of us manage today. She knew. Now you know too.